Well, the situation with this press release from the union has actually caused quite a stir, to say the least, here in the Isle of Man. We've got the man behind that. Damien is joining us on the line. Damien, you clearly knew what you were doing when you put this sort of press release out. It's got so many headlines in it to make us, the Isle of Man, look like teaching and relationships between the teachers and pupils and ministers and everybody else. It's all broken down, and this is like the Wild West of a teaching area.
Well, I think that might be one interpretation. That's certainly not the position we see. What we see is, unfortunately, for a large number of teachers, they do experience inappropriate behaviour from a small number. We're not suggesting it by any means that it's a wide number of young people in the island, but a small number of young people in various parts of the island that are causing problems for teachers and, of course, other staff outside of school. And they seem almost emboldened, and that there's no real direct consequences, certainly not for them at the school level, that are meaningful or significant.
You've been described by the Minister as being a militant union. Do you accept that?
No, not for a moment. If we were a militant union, you wouldn't expect us to have engaged in a series of talks with the government, to have alluded to the government a number of weeks ago, the seriousness of the issues. They first suggested that we were trying to overplay our hand, and it wasn't. It was more of an individual or a small number of our members were being affected. So we told them that we would provide them with some evidence of that. We would survey our entire membership. And in fact, the response that we've got back is representative of what we believe is 1 in 5 of the teachers on the Isle of Man. So I think it's a culture of denial from the government, for sure.
Well, we're running the press release so people can read it. I mean, it's first of all, let me say, you say 1 in 5. I mean, you don't represent all the teachers on the Isle of Man. In fact, another person was saying to us here, the Sue Moore was saying that it really isn't all the teachers. You have some, and I think the Minister also said the same thing. You only represent some. And can you tell us how many people took part in this survey?
We've had 80 responses to the survey.
No, but how many people did you poll? I mean, how many people were asked to take part in that survey?
Well, that's a confidential matter, Paul. I'm sure you wouldn't expect me or any other trade union to reveal the total membership of its union. But what we do know is that the number of responses we've had, the 80 responses we've had, represent what we understand are 20% of the workforce. So we were told by the government that it was the issues that we were initially raising and talking about to them were specific to a school or a couple of our members. Clearly, that is not the case. We also had anecdotal evidence, not just from our own members, but from other trade unions and their members and experiences of vandalism of their vehicles, being attacked and threatened in their own homes, being verbally abused in various parts of the island, not just Douglas, and being spoken to in a way that it would be completely unacceptable. And all we asked for the government to do is to help protect those of our members and members of other trade unions that work in schools that seem to be subject to abuse outside of the workplace for undertaking the work they do.
And legislation is being changed because at the minute it's a police matter only, as far as the Isle of Man government tell us that they are obviously looking at that. I mean, you understand the implications of that press release, don't you? The headline grabbing, I mean, UK media, as this gets released at midnight, will be all over this, if they're not busy with Brexit, admittedly, but this will make the Isle of Man look like it's really got a serious problem. And do you think there is a serious problem, or is it just a few people who have come to you have a problem?
Well, it's definitely not a few people. I go back to the numbers, 80 people, and the percentages within the report, which those watching this broadcast will be able to access, are quite staggering in terms of the numbers that are impacted by threats of physical and verbal abuse on a fairly regular basis, Paul. And we understand that the legislative framework in the island affords currently, on the interpretation of the government, no opportunity for young people to be held accountable for any behaviour that is unacceptable whenever they're outside of school. Now, that isn't just at the end of the school day. That's also whenever they're on school visits or school trips or away representing their school at another sporting event, for example.
Okay, would you say the questions were loaded? I mean, really, that you were looking for a certain answer almost in the way you put them?
Well, no. Well, as a union that represents teachers across England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Jersey, and Guernsey, this is a survey that we run in other nations and on other islands.
Exactly the same questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe the Channel Islands didn't have a good ride from this either, and I think even parts of the UK have also had the same sort of responses. Is that correct?
Yeah, the initial sort of responses, and from in our engagement with the government over the last number of months, we've drawn on that experience whenever those surveys were run, and we brought the factual evidence to the table, and we've said that we believe we have some ideas, some solutions that you could put in place. But it really has been a case of, well, we've got some legislation coming along which may take between 18 months or 2 years or a bit longer to bring into play. But there was never any firm commitment that that legislation would definitely be amendable or amended to incorporate the changes that we believe are required to provide that protection to our members. And we can understand that, but we've also had advice, some legal advice, which we've shared with the department and the Attorney General's representatives, that believe that the current Education Act can be interpreted in a way that provides our members with the same level of protection as they get in many other parts of the UK.
You've been on the Isle of Man a fair few times. I mean, you've been around schools, I trust. Have you managed to just walk in and have a look? Because I mean, we go in and we see something that obviously is not quite what your survey is saying.
Well, I don't want any of the listeners or the watcher or those watching the recording to think for a minute that every single minute of every single day there's chaos in schools. That is not what this survey is portraying at all. There's some absolutely fantastic practice across a number of schools in the Isle of Man in terms of their internal behaviour policies. One of the schools which we've seen the behaviour policy from QE2 is an absolutely fantastic model of best practice, and one which we have tabled to the department a number of months ago by way of a framework that could be suggested by the department and endorsed by the department to all schools as a blueprint for them to adopt and amend as they see fit, because currently the department don't have a model policy that all schools could follow. And that's one of the positive suggestions we believe that we've made in our ongoing dialogue. But unfortunately, at this point, up to this point, the department have not taken that opportunity to engage at that level.
Teachers told me many times, in fact, that recruiting here has been quite challenging. And in fact, there's supply teachers, in use here, and they reckon this sort of Google thing, because it will end up as one of those things you type in, teaching practices in the Isle of Man, for a long time to come, this will come up in the Google search. It's not a good place to work. You accept that?
Well, the Isle of Man's a fantastic place to visit, and many of our members, in fact, all of our members that we engage with, talk about the positive experiences of life on the island, working on the island, the valuable contribution that they're making to the young people, the educational impact that has, not just in the short term, but in the long term for the future economic viability of the island and the workforce. And the challenges that the Isle of Man face in terms of some elements of unacceptable behaviour that the members experience most often outside of work, are not unique to the Isle of Man. We believe that the government has some real positive roles to play through partnership working, through engagement, and we believe that we can find a way forward that will be mutually beneficial for everyone. I don't accept for a moment that the Isle of Man is not a positive, attractive place to work. It does face some challenges, which they need to,
But clarifying things like when you say that pupils aren't ready to work, is it like 30 minutes or something that someone was saying? I mean, is that just them settling down? I mean, it can read that they're being disruptive by that 30 minutes period or whatever. Do you accept that some of your language may be a bit misleading?
Well, I don't think so. I think, bearing in mind we've all experienced school at some point in our life, and as a serving primary school teacher myself, disruption doesn't have to be someone standing up, waving the finger at a teacher and heckling them and being belligerent. Disruption can be grunting and groaning as you're getting your pencil case out, or deliberately rolling your pencil or pen off the end of the table 2 or 3 times. And if I take a secondary school example, if there are 6 lessons in a day, and it takes 5 or even 10 minutes just to get 3 or 4 people who constantly are low level interrupting and being disruptive settled, then that 5 or 10 minutes adds up to between half an hour and an hour a day, and that has a detrimental impact on the other young people who are already. And I'm not suggesting for a minute again that that's because of any overt defiance in school, but we do know from our members that in some schools there will be the opportunity for that teacher to perhaps refer those 1, 2, 3 young people to a colleague in a nearby classroom, or ask for some support from senior management team members, where in other schools it'll be up to the teacher to sort that out themselves, and maybe not rely on a senior member, be able to rely on a senior member of staff to provide an appropriate level of intervention. And it's dealing with problems at a low level that send a very clear message that there are boundaries that need to be maintained and will be enforced in a consistent way, and that's important to maintain order and discipline.
Well, you brought the school days in there, and I think we all know the teachers that we could all mess around with, get away with a bit more, and those that were sharper and more disciplined and got underway with the classes, and they're probably the ones that we actually remember, and we don't actually like the ones that were too slack. I mean, do you maybe accept that maybe some people in your teaching profession, in your union, maybe it's not the job for them if they find it too stressful?
No, I'm not prepared to accept that unless there's an agreed, consistently applied behaviour management policy, because each teacher will bring their unique enthusiasm, energy, ideas, and particular personality to the work they do, whether that's in a primary school or in their subject area in a secondary school, and that's right and proper. But there has to be some acceptable norms that everyone feels that they have ownership of, that allow for that. That allow for a structured, organised workforce and workplace. And again, I want to be clear to the listeners and to those watching that we're not suggesting at all that this is not the case in large elements across many of the schools in the Isle of Man. But the results from the 80 members that have replied, again representing 20% of the teachers on the Isle of Man, would suggest that there are some systemic issues that do need to be talked about, do need to be discussed.
Right, you're coming to the Isle of Man. What's your plan? Is it just to meet with your representatives? Are you having meetings with the government and head teachers? What's your issue when you get here?
Well, the plan is to meet with our members for their annual general meeting, where we'll be issuing them with hard copies of our behaviour survey, and to discuss with them what we believe are the next steps, how they feel that we can best progress the issues. We remain committed to meet with the government to continue to seek solutions and to go through ideas that we've tabled. We're happy to table more, but it takes 2 parties to be involved in a negotiation, and the department currently seem to have taken a view that we have to wait for the legislation to change in 12, 18, 24 months.
Just to finish with, did you warn them that this was underway? Did you give them any sort of a time to get their preparations ready, or was this just push upon them today to find out what your survey had said?
Well, certainly we have issued the press release and given them copies of the entire survey. In fact, I've emailed that over early to mid-afternoon today to the department. So they will have received the information ahead of, sorry, when I say today, I mean Wednesday, ahead of the release of the survey to our members tomorrow, which is Thursday.